Hey everyone, good morning. It's just about 3 minutes after, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us all for part 3 of our product management webinar series, Metrics That Matter. My name is Lisa Cream and I'm a senior marketing coordinator here at Globant. If you're just joining the series for the first time, don't worry. Each of these webinars is designed to be a standalone presentation, so you'll be able to follow along pretty easily, even if this is your first time with us. If you do want to review the first and second webinars from the series, they're both available on YouTube in their entirety. We're recording this webinar too, and it will be uploaded to YouTube so that you can watch it again or share the presentation if you'd like. And now I'm excited to introduce my colleague, Trisha Servinen. Trisha is a senior product manager at Globant. Hi, Trisha.
Hello.
Trisha has over 10 years of exceptional product management experience and has a lot of really valuable information to share with all of you, whether you've just broken into the field or are a veteran product manager like she is, or even just want to learn more about what she and others in her role do. In this webinar, Trisha will be exploring some of the different metrics that product managers use to help build and improve digital products. She'll first discuss different kinds of product management metrics and then take you through a deep dive of how and why you might apply them to your work. I'm sure that you'll all have questions along the way, so please use the Q&A feature on the panel to ask these questions. I'll be monitoring questions throughout the presentation, and then we'll move into a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the webinar. And during that time, I'll pass your questions along to Trisha. She may not have time to answer all of them, but she will get to as many of them as she can. But Trisha can explain all this a lot more clearly than I can. So without further ado, I will hand things over to her. Take it away, Trisha.
Thanks, Lisa. All right, so today we are going to talk about metrics that matter. And Lisa did such an awesome intro that let's just get started, dive right in. So what we should expect to learn today in this webinar is how to describe how to choose a KPI for your product. We'll be able to identify whether a metric is a vanity metric or an actionable metric, and then we'll recall ways to gain actionable metrics. So it's always important to make sure we're defining our terms. So first of all, what is a KPI? So a KPI is a key performance indicator, and it's essentially a metric that your product team can use to track whether or not a product is successful. You'll hear about KPIs throughout your business. There are all different sorts of KPIs, and the ones that we're focusing on today are for product metrics. So why do KPIs matter? Well, KPIs they allow us to objectively understand if we have people using our solution, which the key there is that we can objectively understand it. So opinions are fine. When we're doing work together, everyone has experiences and opinions, and so those are great. Educated opinions are even better because they come from our experiences or the research that we've done in the past. The thing that makes metrics great is that they really help to equalize the folks in the room so that we can agree on a direction to dig further into. And so it's not just somebody's opinion, but rather we can look at this data and we can look at these metrics and say, here's the thing that the data says. Here are these numbers that are hard to argue with. What's really important to understand is that this can only happen if we agree on what metrics we're going to track and agree on what metrics are important. And so that brings us into, well, what are the best KPIs? What are the best metrics for us to look into to be able to move our product forward? And I love to start with SMART metrics. So SMART metrics are metrics that are specific. They are something that you can, in fact, measure. That's important. They're achievable. There's nothing worse than having a metric that frankly, like, raising revenue when you're already making $200 billion a year, raising revenue 200% would be quite difficult unless you were giving away gold or things that are relevant, something that's actually, again, going to help you move your product forward. And then time bound. Time bound is actually the one that most people forget when they're setting their KPIs, is to say, we want to achieve this thing in this given amount of time. So it's really important to put a bounds around around when you want to achieve, or what in what time this metric should be achieved. So when I was working at the sports company that I was working for, I was working on a digital product where we had a bunch of articles that folks would come and read, right? And so what we looked at were pages per visit for repeat users each month. That was the metric that we had decided to track. And the reason that was important was because we actually got a lot of free users to our site. So we got a lot of people pushing users to our site. And so our first visit wasn't all that important. It didn't really mean that folks were going and actually like enjoying the product that we had put out there. So our metric was we wanted to increase pages per visit for repeat users each month from 1 to 2. And again, that's achievable in a month, to be able to say where users most like are now only reading 1 article, we now want them to read 2 articles. And so what we did was we were able to change our related articles algorithm and give editors new ways to link to other articles. And then they're decided that folks were actually engaging with the content that we were putting out there. So again, pages per visit for repeat users each month. It's specific. It's something that we could measure using Google Analytics. It was achievable going from 1 to 2. It was relevant to us because it meant that folks were reading the content, and it was time bound. We wanted to do this in a month. Okay, so after we've decided that we want smart metrics, the next thing is to look at the difference between vanity metrics and actionable metrics. Oftentimes what you'll see is that folks will go first towards vanity metrics, when really as product folks, we really need to focus on actionable metrics. So again, defining our terms, what is a vanity metric? A vanity metric is one where it's generally easily available, but it doesn't really tell you much about how customers are using your product, or even if they're using it. It's something that that is pretty easy to track. And in fact, products like Google Analytics and the other analytics applications out there tend to give you these types of metrics without doing a ton of work. So it's that first JavaScript snippet you put in. And so examples of vanity metrics are things like daily active users, monthly active users, downloads, sessions. And so why are these vanity metrics? Well, if you think about it, these will often tell you about whether or not your marketing campaign has been successful, rather than whether folks are actually using your product. So if you look at things like daily active users, all that says is that someone came to your site. So they could have come to your site because you put out a really great tweet, and that's great. That means someone really responded to that tweet, and your marketing team has something that they can now use to work on more acquisition, or downloads. It just means, again, someone saw an ad out there, or someone heard about you in PR on some site, or word of mouth. And again, these things are wonderful things to track when we're talking about acquisition. But whether or not someone's actually using your product, it's really hard to know what to do if your downloads go down from yesterday to today. How will I change my product because my downloads went down today? It's really hard to know what to do. So what we do is we look at actionable metrics, and actionable metrics are ones that help us make a decision about how to change our product. So looking at some examples of what those might be, repeat users, that's probably the favorite one that I have, that I love to look at, because it tells whether or not someone has wanted to come back, which means that their first use, they found something that was valuable, and they've decided that there's reason enough to come back to it. So I have something I can play with there. Churn and retention, opposites of the same thing. Conversions. So conversions are anything that's important to you and your business. I happen to put signups, leads, and purchases on this slide, but it could be anything. It could be that they took a photo. if taking a photo is really important to your business, or posting a photo if you're Instagram, or sending a message if you are a chat program. So a conversion is going to be anything that's important to the success of your business. And so looking at those, it can help you to understand where you might need to focus in making changes to your product. And then revenue. Revenue is great, except that we all want revenue. We all want our product to be super successful with money. And so instead of just looking at overall generated revenue, which again could be indicators of marketing and other things out there. Looking at the amount of each sale, if you sell something in your product, or the amount for a given group of people. So the amount of revenue that you're getting from this group of people or this other group of people can help you, again, make decisions. So one of the things that folks ask me when it comes time, so I've explained Vanity Metrics and I've explained actionable metrics, and they're like, that's cool. So how do I do this though? Because that seems easy when you say it. But I have people who come to me and they're like, no, I want to track daily active users. What do I do? How do I do it? And so three tips that I have to getting you and your team into tracking actionable metrics is the first one is state what you want to know. Rather than looking at stating just what you want to track, state what you want to know. So imagine that you have an app where it helps people ride the bus. We're going to be a little bit vague. It just helps people ride the bus in some way. So instead of saying, I want to know the number of people who opened my app today, you might say, I want to know who relies on the app to ride the bus. Because if I know who relies on the app to ride the bus, then I know how many people might actually be real engaged users of my app. And so with that, with wanting to know that information about who relies on the app, I can then say, okay, well, I might look at repeat users each week. That might give me an indicator. Or I might look at who uses both the schedule and their digital electronic card to pay each day. The next thing is revisit the 5 whys. So we talked about the 5 whys in the first webinar of this series, and we may have even talked about it in the last one. Because I think the 5 whys are a really valuable technique to use throughout all of product management, which is when someone brings something to you, approaching it with curiosity rather than simply saying no is a great way to bring those folks along and a great way to really understand the people that you're working with. So if they come to you and they say, well, let's track daily active users, the thing you might say is, well, why? And they might say, well, it tells us if people come to the product. And then you can say, why does that matter? Why does it matter for us to know that? Well, because we want to know if people are using it. Okay, well, what does it look like for a user to use the product? And let's define what that is. And once you can get that person to work with you to really articulate what it looks like for a user to quote unquote use the product, then you can start to get at metrics that might help you move something forward. And the last one that I really love is to say, now what would I do? So if you say, hey, I want to track this metric, I want to track whatever metric it is, let's say the number of people who access the schedule, you could say, okay, to validate that it is in fact an actionable metric, you'll say, well, what would I do if I knew that information? If I knew the number of people who access the schedule, and I saw it going up or I saw it going down, what changes might I make? Not saying you have to make them, not saying you have to go forward and actually do something there, but it'll tell you whether or not that metric is actually something that you'll be able to do something with. And so if you knew that the number of people who access the schedule and it went down, then you could say, well, I might change the name of it to something else, or I might change how people get to it and put it more prominent in the app. Or if you were tracking repeat users of the schedule, then we might change, if that went down, we could change what the schedule looks like. Or even if it went up, after we made some changes, and we would know that that those changes were actually effective. And so the key here is to use these types of techniques when folks come to you with vanity metrics and metrics that aren't necessarily going to help you move things forward. And this will help you to be a good partner and really help these people achieve, the people on your team, whether they're stakeholders or the development team that you're working with, help them achieve their goals. And that's really what we want to do, is help folks achieve their goals. So there are a couple final techniques that we can use to get to actionable metrics that I'd love to share with you. So the first one is running tests. Running tests are an excellent way to get objective answers. You can take one version and test it against another version in an A/B test. You can do something like hypothesis experiments, where you have a hypothesis and then you go out and validate whether or not that your assumptions are valid and whether or not that hypothesis is true. And so you set up a test. And we'll actually talk more about how to do that in the next webinar, in the final webinar in this series. And then you can also do user tests and get information about how folks move through your product by doing user tests. Another way is to segment users. I love looking at segments. Segments help us to, rather than looking at millions of users or even tens of thousands of users, to look at users based on how they behave, and then we can make decisions about how to change our product, either just for that segment or for everyone if a certain segment happens to be performing better. We can push people into different areas of our app or our product to get them to behave in similar ways if we do find that there's a segment that is performing better. And then the final way is to track a funnel. So funnels are a really great way to get at conversions, which is to say, okay, well, I have 100 people who signed up, and of that 100 people, 90 signed up for the free trial. And of that free trial, only 30 actually used it. And then from there, 2 people paid me. And so you can see that there's a big drop off between the free trial and usage, which might tell you that that they didn't get enough value during the free trial. Maybe you need to offer more features during the free trial. Maybe you need to change your marketing messages in the free trial. Maybe you need to change the content that's in your app that they're seeing, or frankly, maybe it's just not, the product's not valuable enough for them. And so the thing to understand is that the metrics we're tracking are giving us an understanding of where we need to dig in. Last time we talked a lot about interviewing and customer interviews and behavioral interviews. And if you missed that, don't worry, go back and watch it on YouTube, like Lisa said. When we see the indicators and we see that these are the places we need to dig into, even if we can't predict what we might change, we just know that those are the places where we need to make changes. And then we can go back and do some interviews, and we can go back and do some user tests to find out from our users what's going on. Why are they behaving in the way that they're behaving? So hopefully that was enough information. You've gotten a few insights today on what data you can look at to help you make decisions in your product moving forward. And I think we're going to bring Lisa back here and take some questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Trisha. And thank you to everyone who submitted questions during the presentation. I've been keeping track of all your questions, and now I'm going to pass them along to Trisha. If you have questions as we go, please feel free to submit them. If there's time to get to everyone's questions, we certainly will. Trisha, are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right. Your very first question. You classify DAU as vanity metrics, and because you defined it as a visit. Would you classify it as an actionable metric if you properly define what active means?
theoretically, but I think that there are other metrics that you can track that are more meaningful than just saying daily active users. Like if my active users, even if I define that active is that I opened the app and I took a picture and I posted the picture and I saw that went up or down. Yes, that I might know that I need to do something. Unfortunately, defining that all of those things, it sort of obfuscates the areas that I might dig into, because they would have had to achieve all those things, or they would have had to do these very specific things that really we could just track that then instead. And rather than having daily active users be this sort of catch-all term that we use, let's just call it what it is, which is they took a picture or they posted the picture, or they took a picture and posted a picture. One of the other issues with sort of changing the meanings of phrases like that is that you bring someone new onto your team, and if you don't explain it right to them, then the meanings start to get muddled as more people join. And then the other thing is that things like daily active users, it has a meaning that is in these applications. And so similarly to if you bring a new folks onto the team, if you don't change what it means inside of these analytics applications, then you're not tracking the thing that you think you're tracking. And so I think that it just becomes too hard, and it becomes too, like I said, obfuscated of what you're really trying to get at, but just track the thing that you're defining it is. I feel like that's clearer.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Trisha. Your next question: are there any recommended tools that can be used as a plugin or something for getting these metrics?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's all of the analytics applications can help us get there. It's just a matter of taking the time to set them up. So oftentimes what I've seen teams do is they, take Google Analytics and they put the basics on there, and then they're like, cool, we now know the number of people who come to our site, and we know the number, of sessions and time on page and the basics that they get. But they don't spend the time to actually set up funnels or set up conversions. And so a lot of these tools out there, they all have varying quality to them, and it's whatever works best for you and your product. Try lots of them. They all have the ability to help you get there. Another product, they are not paying me, another product I love is Full Story. Full Story is not going to give you as many numbers in aggregate that can help you, but you can look at what folks are doing, and they do give you some very subjective or very objective numbers that can help you as well. And again, they are not paying me. I just really like their product.
You promise you're not getting endorsements?
Promise.
All right, great. Let's go on to the next question. Who
Sure.
defines the metrics? Is it only the client or the provider, in this case, Globant, or is there a negotiation between the client and provider?
I think if you're working in consulting, like we are here at Globant, I think that it's our job to work with our client. And even if you're a product manager inside of an organization where you're managing the product, like you work at the at the company, Facebook or whatever it may be, it's really important as product managers that we work with our teams to really understand what is important. So what is important to our business? What are the things that are goals that we're trying to achieve this year or overall? What is our vision for this product? And when we really understand that, then that can help us have those conversations around what we should track, because really we need to know what is the thing that we are trying to achieve. What is our goal? And when we get that can help us to start narrow down. Okay, well, if this is our goal, what are the tactics and strategies and tactics that we might use to help achieve that goal? And from there, when we talk about our strategies and tactics, we can say, well, what are the things that we're going to track, or what are the things we need to know whether or not we've achieved that goal or we've achieved that strategy. And so it's a negotiation. It depends on the organization on whether or not like you're the ultimate decider or whether or not somebody else is the decider, the final say. But I think either way, no matter whether or not you are or aren't the be all end all of the decision making, like we should be working with other folks on our team to understand what's important and to be able to help other folks achieve their goals too.
That's great. We have a ton of questions coming in, so I'll keep this rolling along.
Sure.
The next question is, do you have any suggestions about preventative metrics, meaning metrics used to ensure that the product is up all the time, or if the server is down, things like that?
Can you repeat the first part of the question, or the whole question?
They're asking if you have any suggestions on preventative metrics. So metrics that you might use to I suppose, measure the reliability of the product.
Mm-hmm. Suggestions, I think you should track them. As far as which ones are the best ones, no, I don't have any off the top of my head. I mean, again, like you should have an SLA and you should have a goal. So saying like, we want to achieve, 95% uptime or 99.8% uptime, for the month. Focusing on smart metrics in that case, I think is, again, really important. And it's really just about, well, what is the impact of if it goes from 99.8% to 99.7%? How many users are affected by that? How many people can't use your product, and what happens when they can't use your product? So as far as specific things, I think it really matters to what the product is, but focus on smart metrics.
It's a great suggestion. The next question is, how do you define an unacceptable or acceptable value returned from a metric? I suppose they're asking really about, how do you know that the metric has told you what it was supposed to tell you, that the information that it's giving you is valuable?
Whether or not you can do something with it. I mean, that just gets back to whether or not it's actionable or vanity. Can you do something? Can you make a decision? Can you actually make a change in your product with that metric? So it might be great to know whether or not someone clicked a button or tapped on a button. If changing that button is not something you're going to do, or something that is at all meaningful to your product, then tracking that button doesn't really matter, right? Like, so if, let's say that you have a button on your product that says help, and you're going to have help no matter whether or not people use it or not, it's just something that's really important to your organization, then sure, you can track it so that you can look at it every now and again, but it's probably not something that's super important to your business. And so I'd say really just focusing on what are the changes you'd make if you knew that information. What types of changes might you make? And again, exactly what changes to make, that you need to go out and do some user research and talk to users and do some tests and experiments and those types of things. But would you make changes? What types of changes?
That's a great answer. Thank you.
Thanks.
It's like you're a product manager, Trisha. It's like
almost.
You do it for a living. All right. Moving on to the next question. Do you recommend constantly updating KPIs throughout the life cycle of the project? Maybe when you define a set of metrics that you'd like to look at the beginning of the project, and you realize that they may not be valuable the whole way through, do you recommend constantly updating those KPIs? And if so, how do you go about resetting your expectations, I suppose?
Yeah, for sure. If you got it wrong, like, by all means, correct it. That's really important. And that is also like a really important, I think, message that I'd love to just portray to our product folks out there, is that if you get new information that allows you to change your mind, by all means, like, you should change based on getting that new information. And so if the thing you did at the beginning isn't great, then it's really just about saying, okay, well, what should we change it to? And when we do change it, is that metric going to be actionable? And so then how do you communicate that out? I mean, how you communicate something out really depends on how folks on your team and in your organization need to hear it. If it needs to be a presentation, then by all means make a presentation. If it's an email, that's cool. Or if you have to go around to every single person and tell them and walk them through, that's where really understanding the people that you're working with and really understanding their values and how they communicate what they need that really comes into play. And so I think, yes, you should change it if you realize that the thing you were seeking at the beginning is not going to be valuable to you, then by all means change it. And then also from there, make sure that you have a plan for what is the change you're going to make in your product or in the work you're doing to go along with this new metric that you're deciding to change to, because folks will probably want to know that too. What is the impact of making this change? What work will we have to, put to the side, or what work will we have to now redo, or how will that impact our project to have made this change?
Your answer to that question segues really nicely into another question that we received, and you touched on this a little bit, but I'm going to present the question to you anyway, and maybe you can delve a bit deeper. Can you share some insight or maybe some advice on the best way to share these metrics or explain these metrics to other people you work with, especially if you need to take these results to leadership?
As simply as possible. Most people are not ones who want to sit and look at a spreadsheet all day. They want to understand the impact more than they actually want to understand the data, all the data behind it. So as far as the best way to present it, I'd say talk to them about the impact of the metric of, well, we had all of these folks not use this feature anymore. And when we went and looked at it, it went down 20%. And what that means is this for our product. And so that's really what people want to know. And so start with that. Have that spreadsheet in your back pocket, particularly if you're like me and have a bad memory, that you can reference in those meetings. But really talking about the impact of the data is going to be much more meaningful to people, and it's going to help you move through that discussion a lot faster.
All right, awesome. We've got a lot of questions coming in about KPIs and about changing up your metrics and deciding to, as you say, if you realize that you've made a mistake or that you need to change your plan a bit, if you need to be a bit flexible. We have a lot of questions coming in about that. So the next question, I suppose, in that vein is, what is the best way to organize KP alterations? I'm assuming that they mean if you have to make changes, what's the best way to do that? So they give an example. They say you're developing version 1 and you are 1 week away from feature complete, and now someone wants to alter the KPIs. Is that the best time to do that? Would you recommend that a product manager set up a regular review of KPIs to avoid these kind of last minute changes?
Yeah. So whether or not you change your KPIs a week before something's scheduled to launch, it really depends on how long it's taken you to launch. So if you're on a cadence of 1 week releases, then changing your KPIs right before launch is probably not that, it's not going to influence the product that much. If you're working on projects where they're 6 months long and 1 week before you actually put it in front of users, you are changing your KPIs, you have a lot of work that might be influenced by making those changes. And so whether or not to do that depends on your project and your product and the organization that you're in, and the impact of making the change. Sometimes it's better just to release and then say, okay, we're going to put it out there. Our KPIs are wrong. We know that. Like, we just need to get this out there. And now we're going to try again, hopefully in a smaller time frame, that we can actually release again. I do think that constantly looking at your metrics is important. And I think it's really important to set up your success metrics at the beginning. So I really love lean canvases. I'm a big advocate of them. And what I love about the lean canvas is that at the beginning, you're talking about at the beginning of your project, it's this tool that allows you to talk about all of these things that have to do with a project and really getting to a successful project and successful product. And so you've talked about what your success metrics are. And then what's great about this canvas is that the idea with using it is that you're constantly going back and making sure and validating, is this still true? Is this still true? Now that we've done some user research, do we still believe this is true? And so I think having your goal and having your success metrics be at the forefront of your mind all the time is really how you can make sure that what you're putting out there isn't wasteful and isn't something that that you then have to sort of go back and redo. And you'll have negotiated a lot changes before 1 week before the end. So yeah.
All right, great. Well, you mentioned that you really, lean canvas is something that you really like, and that's a great segue into a question that someone asked about a book recommendation. They wonder if you have a book in mind that you can recommend to learn more about actionable metrics.
I don't. I'm sorry. I wish I did, but I don't. The internet is a lovely place, though, and there are lots of articles about this. I did not come up with these terms. I learned them from reading the internet, and I would suggest Medium. Start there.
All right, great. Thank you. We have another question. Also about these kind of specific metrics. They're wondering if Instagram likes are a vanity metric.
Depends on so if you're Instagram, probably not a vanity metric. If you are a product like, I don't know, a mortgage website, getting an Instagram like is probably, yes, a vanity metric. Might be important to the social media team, though, and it might be a metric for them. But as product managers, no, that's not probably not something that's super important to how we would change our product.
Okay, great. Let's see, we have a couple more questions coming in.
Sure.
The next one, let's see. What is your opinion on metrics of product responsiveness, such as loading a page? Is there a general MVP of how responsive a page in an application should be that all product managers follow?
I think Google really provides a lot of great information on this, and so I defer to the tools that Google provides as what a good page load time is. Page load should be fast in general, and it should be in milliseconds to where people can get to the page. The one thing I would say that all product managers should understand is if your page load is really heavy for some reason, and it needs to be, if your dev team tells you, like, there's nothing we can do about this thing, then really prioritizing the content on the page so that users can get to the content they might be interested in fast. And then from there, making sure that when things do load, the page doesn't jump. We've seen this a lot on the internet with ads. When ads come in, the content on the page jumps, and then you end up clicking an ad rather than getting to the information you wanted to see. So my recommendation is follow the tools that Google uses, because really they're going to ding you. And however they change their algorithm, it changes very regularly. So there's not a time period, I think, that we can say is one to rule them all. So follow Google and then prioritize your content.
Great. And what are some of the metrics for teams working in Scrum?
I'm not sure if I understand what that question's asking.
Well, I will ask for some clarification for you. The
Sure.
question just said, which of the main metrics used for teams working in Scrum. I'll try to get some clarification for you, but in the meantime, we can move on to another question. When and how often do you communicate KPIs, and to which audience?
I think when you're deciding them, they should be communicated. Going back, when you're deciding them, and when you are working on your working on whatever it is you're working to deliver. Again, like I said, your success metrics should be at the forefront of what you're doing. So you should always be talking about your goal and what it is that you're looking to achieve, so that everyone, they know what we're what the work is for, why we're doing it. And it also helps to move discussions forward and to make sure that our discussions don't get derailed into something different, because we know this is our goal and this is how we'll know that we've achieved that goal. Once a product is out there and you're working on optimizations and whatnot, I think it really depends on your organization. I know that I've used that a lot, but product manager is mostly about it depends. So find a good cadence. Start with every week or every 2 weeks, and see if that gives people enough information. Check in with them. Hey, do you feel like you understand where our product is going? Try doing it, more frequently, and see if people look at the data, see if it changes enough to be meaningful. The point is, you don't want to over inundate people with information to where they don't look at it anymore. And at the same time, you don't want them to sit there and wonder whether or not you're doing your job or they understand what's going on with the product. And so oftentimes what I found is when either when I'm new in an organization, or when a product has just recently been launched, people want to know more often. What's going on? Is it successful? What do we know? If we don't know whether it's successful, what do we know? What is the information that's out there? And as it's been sitting out there longer, as I've been at the company longer, those inquiries tend to go down. And so then it's just having a regular cadence of every 2 weeks or every month.
All right, great. And we did get some clarification on the question that we asked earlier. To repeat, their question was, which are the main metrics for teams working in Scrum? And they clarified that they meant, such as use velocity and impact, metrics like that.
I will be perfectly honest. I am not an advocate of Scrum, and in development, and so I would say I'm not the expert to talk about those types of things. But there are some really great teams here at Globant that know and practice Scrum pretty regularly, and so I'd say that to reach out to those teams here at Globant, and they could probably give some really great insights and information into that.
Do you have any recommendations about which teams those might be?
The Pod Agility team has a ton of insight into the best practices to running Scrum. All
right, great, thank you.
Yeah.
We have time for probably just a couple more questions here. How do you align business, project, and engineering teams using metrics?
Can you ask that one more time? Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. The question is, how do you align business, project, and engineering teams around the metrics that you're using?
I think that again, this is sort of a repeat of the question we answered just a bit ago, is you have to make them visible. That's the first thing. You have to make them visible, and you have to have people involved, and understanding your goal is the biggest thing, and getting people to agree on the goal. And even if they don't agree on it, getting them to understand that this is our goal, and we're going to move forward with this, knowing that that this is the goal we have, I think is really important. And once you do that, then saying these are the metrics that we're going to track, and this is why we're going to track them, and this is what we believe to be important, and will help us understand whether or not we've succeeded, is the way to get there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We probably have time for just maybe one more question here.
Sure.
Because some of the questions coming in are repeats of questions that have already been answered. Is there some sort of template that you recommend for basic metrics that can be used for actionable metrics purposes?
No, I don't know any out there, but what I would say is, rather than looking for a template, going back to these questions or to these ideas here is a great way. So thinking about what is the thing that you want to know? What is the thing? And we talked here about saying if we're building an app where we're helping people to ride the bus, saying I want to know who relies on the app to ride the bus, rather than just saying, I want to know the number of people who access the app. So what do we want to know? What's important to our business? What's going to help us to get to whatever that goal is? And then the 5 whys, and then asking, well, now what would I do? I love that question, the now what would I do? Because if I can't think of anything that I would do that I would change in my product, then it's probably not a metric that's worth it for me to track. And it's certainly not a key performance indicator. And so really understanding whether or not I personally, as the product manager on this, could in fact make changes, or whether the team that I'm working with can make changes is really important.
Great. Well, it seems like that's a really good question to end on. It's very comprehensive answer. So thank you so much. And thanks again, everyone, for joining us. We're really encouraged by how many of you have participated in the series so far, and we really do appreciate all of your questions. They're great questions. So this wraps up the 3rd webinar in our product management series. There's just one webinar left, so be sure to keep an eye out for an invitation. And of course, you can head over to YouTube where you can access the first 2 webinars in the series. You'll be able to see the presentations and the live recordings. You'll also be able to access this one in full pretty soon. You should receive an email notification when it's available for you to watch. If you have any additional feedback or questions for Tricia, questions about product management or about the series, or if you'd like to know more about Globant's product coaching offering, feel free to send her an email. Thanks again, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day. We will see you all for part 4 of the product management series. Thank you so much.